Today I'm going to talk to you about brain damage. And very few people can come from the kind of brain damage I had um, and be able to ski and dance. Now, I do cripple several times a year because I'm chemically hypersensitive, but that was caused by the brain damage. And brain damage, I'm not going to talk about cure, because if you break a leg, you don't cure it, you heal it, okay? There's a difference. If you break your leg and it's got a fracture in the bone, you at some point you have to do certain exercises to get the mobility back. And if you've got a torn ligament, you have to do stretch exercises to get the elasticity of that particular ligament, or it'll seize up and be like a rock, and you're going to lose your mobility. So the same with the brain. And how did I know that? Well, I started to cripple. I was 6 years old, and I didn't like being in bed. I loved school. I loved learning. I loved being active, but I was barred from sports all through school because it was too risky. I would, like that, take an attack, and I would drop to the ground, and somebody would trip over me, and they were afraid of me injuring them and me getting injured. So naturally, the teachers weren't trying to be mean to me. It was just safer that I couldn't do team sports. But I had children that I grew up with, particularly Ronnie Oystrick in particular. He made sure I exercised. He got me skating and tobogganing and climbing hills and swimming. And so even though I was weak, if my legs were weak, because of him, I always was motivated to get to my feet somehow. And I began to research in the library at the age of 8 years old. And frankly, and I was researching the brain as well as other parts of the human anatomy. And I never found anything that was particularly beneficial. And when I was 25, Seventh-day Adventists started me on a vegetarian diet. And although I couldn't maintain it 100%, I have to say for 30 years I was mainly vegetarian. And it actually didn't work. And I never knew why, although perhaps it was better than eating bacon. But and it was certainly better in the sense that I was eating more natural food, not necessarily organic, but less junk food. But that didn't work, and I never knew why. So to make a long story short, because I've done my biography already on Facebook, it's there if anybody wants to go through it. It's almost 300 pages, and the whole story is there. But what's really important is that even Alzheimer's, it can be reversed. You can control and reverse. And the first thing, yes, of course, is diet. And that took me until I was 70 years old, and I'm 78. Because the government lies to us, we're on the take to industry, and it doesn't concern anybody that there could be poison in our diet, and there is a lot of it. So when I decided to research with Americans, because I was so brutally treated by Canadian doctors and Canadian society and Canadian government and agencies, that I just picked up the phone and called the White House. I said, I'm terminal and I can't read or write, and I've got brain damage, and I want to research chemicals that chemical poisoning and the diseases that are caused by chemicals. And make a long story short, they connected me to the National Department of Chemical Hazards. And from there, that's also on my website, all that research, if anybody's interested, and most people aren't. But to really look at brain damage. The first thing was I needed a gas mask along with diet. And the gas mask I got in '86, and that was so easy. MSA, it was a wonderful company, and they even helped me, along with the American head office union, get better gas mask equipment for the men in the mines. And when you look at it, our firemen are going into toxic fumes. What do you think? It's carrot juice? They're getting brain damage. And they pass a genetic predisposition to chemical hypersensitivities and all sorts of mutations to their children. And that's been known by scientists for 400 years. Guess what? But it's being ignored, okay? And our whole society and our government and our education is very careful to make sure that we don't have this information. So we are raised very ignorant. And so we're not concerned with poisoning the planet because it doesn't concern us, because we're not even given the education that we're poisoning ourselves. We're not just poisoning the planet, people. We're poisoning ourselves and our children. And the men that work in the factories, and the men that work as mechanics, and the firemen, and the military, and the list is endless on poisoning that can so easily be controlled by a simple gas mask. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we can recycle. We have motors that don't have to spew everything out the back end of your vehicle, but they're not being built because there's no desire to build them. Company doesn't give a damn if they poison you. Get real. That's not their job. Their job is to make money. So then we get poisoned, and then our doctors aren't trained that we're being poisoned because we're educated to not believe that all this stuff in our air, food, water, and beverages is poisoning us and our children. So the doctors are trained not to know that. So nobody's looking at that, you see. And when I started this in '86, after a doctor tried to murder me, the fact that the information was out there was very annoying, that it was so much information, even going back to 1775. Cheminosis was diagnosed by the Royal Society of Scientists. So anyway, there's many different levels of brain damage. And if you come from a family that was raised on an organic kind of farm or the old-fashioned way, they didn't need pesticides for their farming. That's a fallacy. That's Monsanto, who, and the Nazis making money off of poisoning people, and they didn't lose the war. We did. We think we did, but believe me, they control all our agriculture. They control our food industry. They control our government. So they just found another way. Yeah, and they're in control. And these evil degenerates that make their money off of poisoning people. And there are many, many ways that if you come from a family, like I say, that didn't have a lot of poison, well, then you may be like my mother, who was healthy enough to naturally detox, providing you weren't exposed. And she worked in an air-conditioned environment as a saleswoman. So she was not in a toxic environment working. And neither was I, because I worked in an office. But because I love the outdoors, that's where I got it. And not realizing it, I would dance outside. I would walk and run outside. I was skiing in diesel fumes from the snow machines. Oh, the list is endless. And all the while, I'm trying to get well. But it was really hard to get the truth. because each agency there was an environmental agency. They had information about trees, water, and air. The National Department of Chemical Hazards had the most extensive research on how to detoxify from toxic chemicals. But they still didn't look at it as brain damage. And so finally, after doing all that research and still not getting well, I just went as organic as I could, stayed in a gas mask as much as possible, even slept in one, and began to develop exercises for my brain. And I would have periods, months at a time, where I'd be really functional and think, oh, geez, I've made it, and then crash, down I go again. So what I'm going to talk to you about is, in a nutshell, number one, raw okra, nature's natural amphetamine. Start with 10 or 15 a day and flush yourself right out. And be completely organic, plant-based, no meat for 3 days. I'm not asking you to become a plant-based vegan. Most people can't because they've been raised a certain way, and it's just too hard. But you can do it for 3 days. And you must get distilled water, and also pure spring water if you drink it. There is scientific evidence that spring water will stop the brain from shrinking. These were studies done in Italy and European countries where they have a lot of pure spring water in their daily diet. Fruit juice is fructose sugar. It's pasteurized. That means it's cooked, and it has no benefit, but it's just a sugar. It may not be as bad as white sugar, but it's sugar. And pop, of course, is pandemic in shrinking the brain. A brain exercise, dance, cross-country ski, get your whole body moving as much as possible, because if you don't exercise, your blood doesn't flow into your brain, it doesn't get the oxygen, and your brain neuroplasticity, and it'll help to reverse aging. So even if you're healthy, it's a good idea to do that. But the next thing in brain exercise that is very hard, okay? You take a book and you read a page out loud, and there's different parts of your brain for memory. And I lost all memory. I couldn't read or write. Now, I was an investment analyst and a friggin' genius off the wall. And today I can read biochemistry, okay? So I'm in a position to talk about how to reverse brain damage, because I've done it more than once. And you read that page and then you write it by hand. And then if you can type it, because all that uses different sections of the brains. Now, if I type about 80 to 100 words a minute. It's too fast for me to actually retain information. If you sit there and you punch if you're a two-finger typist, well, maybe it'll be beneficial, but you still need to handwrite and read. And when you read silently, it's not the same. You read. You got to do different processes. Read silently, read out loud, write the page, and type it. That's 4 steps. Okay? Yes, 4 steps. And the healthy fats, boycott all vegetable oils, canola, rapeseed, sunflower, corn, etc. Use olive oil, coconut oil, and I prefer olive oil. The research, as far as I can tell, is that there is nothing on the planet more healthy for cooking than olive oil. There is a lot of hoopla about coconut oil, but I don't like the flavor, so I stick to olive oil. And don't cook at really high heats. A medium heat is quite sufficient. You don't want it burning. And intermittent fasting is really important. You just reduce your food intake for short periods, like one day I go all day without eating, maybe once a month, if that, depending on how, if I get really sick, I'll do it more often. But other than that, I don't eat breakfast. I don't believe in it. It just makes me sick, and I can see no reason for eating it. We've got all kinds of fat that we can burn off. We don't need to keep stuffing our bodies with food. But because we're raised doing that, it's habitual. It's like an addiction. So it's I'm not saying this is easy to do, but I'm saying you work on it. And you fast for as long as you can. I fast until supper. That's my daily routine. But if I stay in bed and I'm crippled, and I don't, and then I fall into depression, and then I don't force myself to get up, well, then naturally I'm going to get toxic. Okay, no matter how you feel, how much pain you're in, you got to at least get up and pace around a little bit. If that's all you can do, just shuffle, do something. I like to put on YouTube belly dancing or a Latin dancing or salsa. That gets my rhythm going, and it makes me feel good, and it triggers endorphins. And there's also one song from Hair that brings back lovely memories. I was asked to go on Broadway. The director of Hair was in Toronto and saw me moving, and that I had a natural ability as a dancer, and asked me to. I didn't have to go nude or anything. He just wanted me in the cast, and he had another Broadway production he was going to be doing, and he wanted to use me. And I took a paralyzing attack during rehearsal. But every time I hear that one song, endorphins just fly, and I'm back there, and I'm 25, and I'm on my way to Broadway. And it was just a special moment in time for me. But it triggers something in my brain and just makes me so happy for a few minutes, and it motivates. Sleep deprivation is terrible effects on the brain, and if you've got brain damage, a lot of us have sleep issues. That seems to come with the territory of brain damage. If you've been a drug addict or an alcoholic, you're going to have brain damage, and you're going to have these issues. It's really hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but you have to learn to just rest in blackout. Make everything dark. No lights anywhere. Now I do two things to rest. The first thing is I watch old movies, because they've got the same premise and it's not hard in the brain. Or a Hallmark movie is another good one. And my brain gets a little bit dopey and bored because it's not hard on the brain. You know, it's the same routine. Girl meets boy, boy and girl get mad at each other, argue and don't get together, and da, and eventually they fall in love and they get together, and that's it, happy ending. So it's not particularly brain taxing. And then by doing that, I reduce any hyperactivity I may or may not have. So then I just calm myself down. Now, if that doesn't work, there are foods that will induce your pineal gland to make a brain chemical called melatonin. Now, I tried the melatonin tablet and it didn't work. But for me, if I eat a scrambled egg, it helps. It definitely helps me. Or chicken. Or pumpkin seeds. And tart cherries, they contain natural melatonin, and they also have anti-inflammatory effects, um, and they're not as sweet. So the tart cherries, the sour cherries, are better. Um, Google lists walnuts and bell peppers, which did not work for me. And walnuts, if you eat too much, can be toxic. Um, so, and eating nuts is good, except that they break your teeth. you know. So what I do is I get the crushed nuts and I put that in my salad. Um, you can eat estrogen and testosterone promoting foods. Flaxseed and sesame seeds are high, but if they're not ground, they're of no benefit. Organic fruit, oranges, strawberries, peaches, fish, salmon, trout, pickerel, and sardines. Stick to those. Carrots, chickpeas, legumes, beans, sweet potatoes, spinach, blueberries, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, bell peppers, and olive oil. They all help with your hormones. 12-minute meditation every day. Well, for me, that's easy. I just put the TV on with the Weather Channel, um, kill the sound, and I sit there and I just kind of zone out. And that's the one thing that I do when I first wake up. It's better for people not to try to talk to you. Let your brain just slowly come awake. Go in a park, sit in a park and meditate by a lake. Just being quiet and clean fresh air anywhere can add thickness to the cerebral cortex, which governs memory. That's why even if I can't dance, climb the wilderness trails or cross-country ski, I go to a park across town that has swings. And they're not just children's swings, they're adult swings. And an adult can go on them. They're very strong. And 10 minutes of that, and it rejuvenates your brain cells. And walking in a wilderness trail, of course, is very healthy. But watch the time of day because you don't want to be around with the mosquitoes and the bugs. That's a good way to get yourself with West Nile virus and horrible Legionnaire's disease and God knows what else. We've got terrible, terrible viruses now that we've imported from Africa, and they're not dying. They're staying alive in North America now. The winter doesn't kill them all. So and spiders and so on. So you have to be careful. And be careful about walking in swamps and things like that because there's terrible fungus, and you can get a deadly, horrible fungus disease, and people are dying from it, and they're not getting properly diagnosed. So, we are in a very toxic world, and I think our ancestors were trained, and somehow we've lost all that training. And in summer, I try to find a clean outdoor lake to swim in if you can. Right now, I'm not having much success in Northern Ontario. Our lakes are so polluted. We spray pesticides by air over our forest to kill the beetles, not concerned with killing the children and poisoning our water. Stupid. Anyway, we've got sea-doos and ski-doos that are all poisoning our atmosphere. Now, these vehicles could all be 100% clean and recycle and blow no fumes at all, and they could be electric, but no, we're not smart enough to do that because you see, we don't, as long as you don't believe that all of these chemicals don't poison you, well then, and the pollution doesn't kill you, then why would you do anything about it? You see, catch-22. But they are poisoning you, and sitting on your arse is not exercise. Excuse me, it's not exercise. It may be fun, but it's not exercise. And I can't go in a swimming pool because of the chlorine. I'm allergic. So You know, if you're not allergic, by all means, swim in a swimming pool. Um, and But I go to the beach and I sit and listen to watch the seagulls and children playing and all of that, happy endorphins in the brain, and do as much of that as you can and socialize and learn something new, whether it be cards or poker's not a good idea because you easily get addicted to that, but take a carpentry course, sewing course, and something new. Um, I do enough research and with Facebook that I'm learning something new every day, because every day I'm researching new diets and new research, and I try to keep on top of what's happening with the research. And if possible, be 100% organic, but not everybody can do that. Um, it's it, it's very difficult. I'm in Northern Ontario, and getting organic, clean food, by the time it gets here, it's half rotten. So you just do the best you can. But even if you eliminate and eat 50% organic, it will make a difference. And get as much clean air into your lungs as you possibly can, or wear a gas mask in all city driving, walking, or running in the city outside. MSA Advantage gas mask is the best. It's just very lightweight. It's silicone, and it's wonderful. I can't say enough about it. So that's my talk for today. I'm under 30 minutes, so that's not bad, to teach you to reverse brain damage. And yes, it can be done. So if you have a friend or a family member with brain damage, those are the steps you take. And if you go to my website, www-okra diet number 4 all.com, and I'll type that up after. All of that information is there. Okay, over and out, and God bless, and have a lovely day. Going back to the brain exercises, I did forget one other. I call it step 5 or 6. Write a page how you feel every day and keep a journal. Keep a journal on what you're eating, how you feel, what you did, where you go, like a diary. Very, very important. Okay, sorry about that.